All right, cheers. What's going on, fellas? You're joining me for another deadlift day out in the garage. We'll see how I feel. I don't feel too fatigued from my Wednesday event session. Last Wednesday was my third heaviest week, so I think I got 2 more heavy weeks of events before I deload before the contest. So a little pre-fatigued, but I feel pretty stout. I feel pretty good. My recovery has been pretty good for this late in the prep, and I'm feeling pretty good, which is rare. Usually the goal is to feel like shit and still be performing well, and then strip back that fatigue and boom, pow, I'm very strong. But I feel pretty good, performing well. Gonna stay the course, I guess. Looking forward to this session because I am going, hopefully, we'll see. If I get 3, whatever, it is what it is. But 4 reps at my working weight on the deadlift would be an all-time rep PR. So looking forward to that. Pretty stoked. Yeah. After that, we'll do some squats to pins. Definitely will be looking to do, maybe in the off season, some front squats here. I find that my squatting feels better when I'm engaging with the bar the same way at least 2 times per week, meaning if it's high bar, it's high bar twice. If it's low bar, it's low bar twice. If it's SSB, it's SSB twice. So, we can pause, we can tempo, we can go to pins, we could use accommodating resistance. All of those things allow me the amount of practice I need, but I still feel very technically sound. If I'm engaging with the bar in a different way, so maybe one day is a high bar, one day is a front squat, then I feel a little bit less technically proficient. Though, that being said, that is a very good way to build general strength, right? Because the squat is more of a general strength builder than it is an actual event I compete in. I don't always need to be at my most skilled. So we might be looking at, after this contest, doing one day SSB, one day front squats, because front squats carry over phenomenally to so many strongman events. They are very good. Really a big fan of the effects those have on my physicality, especially as it pertains to strongman, but just general strength in general. Yeah, very cool. In the warm-up, we'll do our 5 rounds, EMOM, leg raises, just what I've been doing for my ab work recently. Then we have our rowing and our hamstring curls. I was going over it with Kirsten. I feel like my legs will be at roughly the amount of strength needed to pull 880, if not already here pretty soon. Leg strength is relevant to the deadlift, but you don't have this super high ceiling. There are some phenomenal deadlifters with some pretty suspect leg strength. So it's good to squat. It's a great general developmental tool for the deadlift, but you don't need to be the world's best squatter to get reasonable amounts of leg drives into your conventional deadlift. We talk about sumo. Yeah, there's probably a little bit more demands on the knee extensors, so being a better squatter might help a little bit proportionately more. Probably kind of where I'm at with leg strength. In terms of like posterior chain hypertrophy, it's probably big enough, but I would need to kind of run through more of a strength at a peaking style phase. A lot of that will just come down to continuing hammering volume, growing my hamstrings with the hamstring curls and maybe some back extensions, and then taking that amount of muscle mass I have through the posterior chain and getting it a little bit more maximally strong by doing my stiff legs earlier in the week, predominantly maybe a little bit heavier, a little bit lower rep, to take that musculature I have and like train it to output maximal force, train it to hold position against very difficult loads, but I feel like the base is reasonably built through the whole lower body. My core is feeling pretty strong. Of course, it'll have to get a bit stronger for 880. That's a lot of weight, but I'm feeling pretty good about those kind of aspects of the pull. The leg power, the posterior chain will be there. I've kind of got a plan. It's kind of on pace. The core kind of feels like it's on pace. I was talking to Kirsten the other day though. Man, I got some work to do before my upper back is ready for 880. That shit will tug me forward if I go for it with the amount of lat strength I have right now. So got a lot of rowing to do, got a lot of pull-ups to do. Hopefully we'll just see some very quick increases in our performance metrics on those when we're really applying a little bit of extra force to pushing those forward, maybe doing a few extra down sets per session. Maybe after this contest, we'll sneak in a little bit more frequency with the vertical horizontal pulling to try to get that up to par. So that way everything is coming up together alongside my deadlifting, and then we can enter maybe a peaking phase if I do feel the base is big enough for 880 and pull those things back and try to deadlift a lot. All right, what's going on, fellas? It is a glorious day to absolutely spaz in my garage. I've probably already given it away with the title. Maybe I won't be doing a thumbnail because I am exhausted. I've got my homework to do to get ready for, I believe, my 3rd to last session of heavy barbell to overhead for the upcoming show. Your boy is fucking tired. So we'll see about the thumbnail, but I think I've given it away. Massive 40-pound all-time rep PR, heaviest set of 5 I've ever hit by a fat margin. Just 4 would have been really good with the context of like event-specific fatigue, kind of where I'm at. It would have been just like a kind of nominal 2.5-pound rep PR if I did 4. But I was warming up and good oogly moogly, I felt strong. So I was like, I started to get it in my head, maybe my third to last warm up. I was like, I might be able to do 5 today. That would be absolutely sick. So I was smart, and when I did the 5, I dropped my back off, and I also dropped the pin squats today because I got to try to put in a good performance. I don't have that many opportunities left to put in quality sessions for that barbell to overhead. So basically, when we're entering like true peaking phases like this, it's really hit that big lift. And then the second that big lift is done, maybe there's a little bit of auxiliary work, maybe there's a little bit of active recovery work, but your mindset shifts to, okay, the moment that big lift gets put down, you're prepping for that next heavy session because there's a certain number of heavy touches left and you got to maximize your recovery for each one. So as soon as I did that top set, I was like, okay, I got to start getting ready for tomorrow. As much as I want to keep pushing the squats, keep pushing the back offs, I made the wise call. I included a lot of pause reps on my warm-ups, which is just something I do to make sure I'm holding good positions off the floor, and it paid off on my top set. Been doing the 5 rounds every minute on the minute, hanging leg raises. First I did leg raises, then I started doing kind of knees to elbows, just as kind of a movement progression. And those have been working quite well. My low back feels about as good as it could, considering how much I'm asking it to do on a training week between this training for a heavy deadlift, as well as the event training that I'm doing, which is obviously it's strongman. It's tough on the low back. It's kind of a very low back heavy sport. But I'm over the moon. This 655 pause last warm up just felt like nothing. I can feel that the emphasis I'm already placing on what I kind of talked about in the intro, which is kind of catching my lats up, really pushing my vertical and horizontal pulling hard. I can already feel the effects of that horizontal pulling. So even though I opted out of the down set and I opted out of the squatting, I still made sure to do 2 difficult sets of the rowing and 2 difficult sets of the hamstring curls. And that's kind of the difficult balance you have to walk. Is on some level you want to dance with the girl that brought you. If these assistance work, kind of pushing those is yielding you good returns on your deadlift, you kind of want to keep doing that. But when we enter a peaking phase and we're trying to peak multiple lifts, like, hey, if I didn't have a priority session until next week's deadlift and I was truly deadlift specializing, yeah, I'd probably crush all of the assistance work that's been helping. But we kind of got to walk that middle ground of managing fatigue, but also still doing some of those things that have been working. As you can see, the first rep flew. I am quite strong right now. 40-pound all-time rep PR, I believe. And this is well ahead of the rep work I was hitting before I peaked towards that 835 pull that is my current PR. In a lot of ways, I kind of consider 825 my current PR, as 825 was done with no hitch. And I generally like programming and training off of a no hitch, even though it's allowed within my sport. But that being said, wow, we are ahead of schedule. So we'll probably take maybe a full deload week, maybe half of a week deload after the contest. And we're really kind of just picking up where we left off with these deadlifts and going to try to keep pushing right after this contest, knock on wood, assuming I come out in one piece with no meaningful injuries that will get in the way of my deadlifting. We're going to keep pushing because I'm not at 880. Nothing I'm doing is quite on that level. But man, I'm ahead of schedule. I've got some made up numbers in my head for the hamstring curls that I would like to get to. I've got some made up number. Like right now, my primary row is these low cable rows. I just really like them. I find that they're semi deadlift position specific, which I can definitely feel when I am and am not doing a motion like this. It could be a lot of different options, but these are one I always like. I've got some ideas in my head of like, I've got a 300-pound stack in my garage. I want to do that for at least a set of 20. I like kind of doing higher rep targets for my horizontal pulling and then maybe a little bit lower rep targets for my vertical pulling. So maybe a lot of the year, I'd be looking at like a 15 to 20 rep target. And if I hit that rep target, I add weight for the horizontal pulling, and then more like an 8 to 10, maybe even 6s for like heavy weighted neutral grip chin-ups. Right now, the protocol that I'm running, I've had to drop down the number of back offs again because we're in a little bit of a peak
peaking phase here. But I've got a top set where the goal is to get 20 or more reps. If I get 20 or more, I add weight the next week. And then I do 2.5 minutes rest. And then I take that same weight that I did for 20 for repeating sets of RPE 8 to get in some volume afterwards. So after that kind of more difficult set, usually it'll look like, okay, well, I'm doing like a set of 21. So cool, green light to go up next week. And then I'll maybe hit like 14, 12, 10 for my 3 repeating down sets. We'll probably get back to 3 down sets on those, or I guess they're kind of straight sets in that way, but pre-fatigued straight sets. We'll probably get back to doing 3 after that big set in the off season when I have a little bit more fatigue from the events not being quite so heavy every week, being able to kind of be fancy with my fatigue management and take like speed sessions, deload sessions, and all that good stuff. I showed you my little trick there. I told you I added a little beam to this so that way it's actually it's not the most difficult at the top and really kind of negligible difficulty at the bottom. It's a little bit more even because the center of the arc is kind of mid-range. Feels a lot better that way. And then I also use the bench block for a little bit of a kind of easier unrack when I'm training by myself, as you saw there. And that works pretty darn well for me for my kind of knee flexion training when I'm at home. Prior to having this machine, which I picked up from some guy who hurt his knee skiing and he used it to rehab it and then he wanted it out of his garage. So I got it for cheap. Prior to that, I was mostly just doing glute ham raises here. Sometimes I would do some like cable ankle brace curl, like hamstring curl type thing. But for the longest time, I was just doing glute ham raises here, and that was working reasonably well. But I'm a meathead at heart, and sometimes like overloading quality of movement doesn't scratch that same caveman itch that, oh, well, I added weight to my sets of 8 to 12. That means I'm better. You know, definitely don't come from a calisthenics background where it's not always numerical overload. There's a lot of qualitative overload. At the end here, I'm showing you my standard routine to do a little bit of a cool down. I do the walk mostly just because it loosens up my hips. And again, I feel a lot better the next day, so I can perform my final overhead session of the week reasonably well. If I don't kind of have these practices of, hey, I need to drink a certain amount of water through the session and then a certain amount of water before I go to bed, eat my meal immediately after I train, I'll take a high calorie meal later in the day, do my cool down walk to kind of loosen up my hips. I've got a mobility routine I do at night, and I also have just been doing a 1 minute dead hang after this session as well. Basically just kind of leveraging everything I can to, I guess none of these things are going to minimize fatigue. So let's be clear there. I guess, it depends on how you define fatigue, right? We're trying to just feel better tomorrow so we can perform better tomorrow. So I guess if you define fatigue as like the acute decrease in performance following a workout, then yes, potentially these things could mitigate a little bit of that. But if we're talking about like kind of physiology, none of these things are driving a particularly faster recovery. But I'm doing everything I can to feel good enough tomorrow to put in another quality session after something heavy like this. So if you made it this far into the video, please leave a like. If you want to support the channel, I have the Patreon in the description where I do answer people's lifting questions on there. I try to get back to people on other platforms, but that's getting progressively harder nowadays. I appreciate you boys for watching as always.